Today I'll be chatting with Craig Fitzgerald and Mel Brewers about all things social purpose. We'll unravel what it all means, talk about why it's important, and chat about the work of the Aspen Medical Foundation, amongst other things. I started by asking Craig and Mel about their respective journeys to their leadership roles in relation to our social purpose agenda. Welcome to a Fireside Chat special. It's Fireside Chat, Aspen Medical Foundation, and social purpose and social impact and all stuff. ESG. We're gonna try and squeeze as much of this in as we can in the next 30 minutes or so. So anybody who's watching out there, don't try and scroll through this. This is quite linear. We're going to go through it in a very structured way. I'm joined today, as I said, by Craig Fitzgerald, Chief Operations Officer at Aspen Medical and Chief Executive Officer of the Aspen Medical Foundation, and my long-term friend in fun at Aspen Medical, the lovely Melissa Brewers, or Mel. Can I call you Mel for the duration?
Yeah,
I'll call you Mel for the duration of this one. Mel Brewers, and Mel is our social impact manager. Now, I'll do a special Fireside Chat with you, and we'll get right into the skin of all that stuff later on. But today we're going to focus on what I've said there, which is this whole area that's so important to us as a business. Craig, I suppose when I joined the company, it was the first time I'd ever heard of, in that sense, that there was actually somebody dedicated to what was then called CSR, right? So corporate social responsibility, and we'll get to that a little bit later because that landscape has changed. And outside of, you were also doing some of this work outside of Aspen Medical, and this was something that was very much stitched into your own personal DNA. Can you just tell us and talk a little bit about basically how you got to that place? Tell us how your journey into that space began and where it is today.
Yeah, it's actually when you did prep us with this question, and when I thought about it, I had to think, well, where did that sort of interest come from? My background is 20 years in the military, 18 years in Aspen now. I think it probably first lit for me in Bosnia. So when I came back from Bosnia and then started fundraising for some orphanages that we were working with over there, and then started to do some volunteer work before I joined Aspen. And then my first role in Aspen was the in-country manager in Solomon Islands. And the local staff and the environment and seeing what our staff on the ground were doing in the Solomon Islands on their weekends, running clinics, all the support they were giving and the training they were giving to our locals, it kind of started from there. And when I came back to Australia as the Director of Operations, really, it really all points, and that's when we talk about the foundation, it points to Glenn and Mel. You know, Glenn and Mel have a very strong social purpose, a very strong commitment to community. So Glenn allowed me and allowed the company to evolve like that. And it's just, you know, it's really over the years seeing what our staff have been engaged in, what we've raised money for, what our staff do inside and outside of the company, or what our team members do. Marisol will have a job. What our team members do inside, outside the company is humbling. So really our role is to try and facilitate that.
So the origins, so just take you back just a little bit into what you've just said. Some of it's quite organic. So it just became a natural thing that the company started to do, but obviously at this stage it's quite structured, and we have quite structured processes and all that kind of stuff. Even from a strategy point of view, we know social impact, as it is, rather than is part of our strategy going forward. So it evolved organically and then became structured first?
It did. It very much, it was, I suppose for me, and I think for a lot of people, they want to work for an organisation that, if you want to do, whether you want to engage or not engage, and we'll talk about this later, you want to work for an organisation that's in the game in social impact, social purpose, whatever you want to call it, to be authentic. We're not perfect, but to be authentic. And really, Glenn and Mel in the early days allowed me then to put in some programs, very unstructured, because we all had day jobs, we all had a lot going on, but it just allowed really probably to scratch to scratch an itch. And I think that's a lot with most of us. Most of us want to do more things. Most of us want to volunteer. We're all busy. We're raising families. We're looking after parents. We're doing all sorts of things. But if an organisation can give you the opportunity, or at the very least, well, I haven't got the capacity, but I know my organisation is doing stuff, hopefully that's a good feeling to the rest of the team.
Okay, thanks for that. Mel, same kind of similar question to you. I probably think I know where your interest in social impact and social purpose started, and CSR and all that kind of stuff. But take us on your journey. How long are you with Aspen Medical, and how did you end up with this wonderful job that you now have? And how did that natural progression?
Well, I've been with Aspen Medical for 10 years and I started in the operations team. I'd just gotten back from overseas and didn't have a job, and my friend Maddie said, would you like to come and have an interview at Aspen Medical? And I thought, oh, sure.
That was Maddie Carolyn.
Maddie Carolyn used to be the team leader here. So I came in and Matt Hughes interviewed me and I got the job, which was much to my surprise, and I started. And then from operations, I moved into HR, which was...
Do we like to call it culture and performance?
Oh, sorry, culture and performance.
Correct.
It's got a fancy name now. It was HR when I moved in.
Of course it was.
Yes.
Culture and performance by the time you'd left.
Yeah, so then when I left culture and performance, I was coming back from maternity leave and Marisol called me and said, we've got this job in working for the foundation, working for CSR under Craig. It was all a bit vague. And
no, I just can't believe that. No, now you're joking, right? Okay, no, go on.
And I actually thought I was dreaming. I was like, are you serious?
Dream job.
A dream job. Like if I could have picked a job, this would be it. Yeah.
And I know, and we'll get to it later on between you and I at some other stage in the future, but June for Joel, really, I mean, I know a lot of stuff was happening, as Craig was saying. There's always a lot of stuff going on at the time, as we called it, the CSR front at Aspen Medical. But you took a particular project on yourself, didn't you? Which was Joel Sardi, who was a member of the broader Aspen Medical team at that time. He worked with Ironside Recruitment, and ex-ADF, and Joel had an accident. He'd had a fall, and you'll correct me on this one. C5. So
yeah, quadriplegic.
And then you took that on, right? As part of, you were at the time, as if I recall, you were in operations, and you just all of a sudden you became this ball of activity around Joel and his work. Just quickly take us through that one.
Yeah, so I have always been interested in, social purpose and raising money sort of thing, that sort of thing. So when Craig had mentioned this guy, Joel, and that was the first sort of introduction to him, and said that he's trying to raise money to go over to America to do this training or this therapy to get him to be able to use his hands and roll himself in bed. And so he needed all the money he could get, and Craig sort of sparked the idea, and then I went back to him and said, well, what if we do a walking thing called June for Joel? And so we got everyone all over the country. I think it was $1 a step from memory. Yep. So we had people in Iraq walking, we had people in the US, we had Leslie was on holidays, Leslie Dorr, and she was on holidays at the time, and she took videos of her walking all through Canada. And we got to $10,000. So the whole of Aspen did 10,000 steps.
I think there was a fair bit of cheating, wasn't there? I think people were pretending to walk, weren't they, and stuff like that. But the point was that money got across the line for Joel, which is fantastic. So that's your journey. Now, we have mentioned this already. We talk about social purpose these days. It used to be called corporate social responsibility. People would call it cause-related marketing in the early days. This is long before you were even working, Mel. I was involved in cause-related marketing, and this has all changed now. Right? This terminology has kind of evolved. We hear about profit for purpose or purpose companies allowed to make a profit and stuff. How has that happened? What's the...
Yeah, and I'm no expert in this, but so from my point of view, corporate social responsibility, which plays a role and still plays a key role with us, is probably best described as giving to particular community programs, fundraising. It can be strategic, but it can be just engaging with employees through what they're fundraising for. CSR traditionally, relies on the behest of, the budget. so it can swing up and down depending on the performance of the company. So that's where CSR has its limitations. But if you move into purpose, and it is an overused word, and so for me, like a social purpose, and we'll get on to B Corp of why we did it, is it's in the centre of what we do.
Stitched into the DNA.
Stitched into it. So we make decisions around it. We make decisions on should we be involved in this. We make decisions on commercially. This might be the best commercial thing we do, but the social impact of it is can outweigh that. And yes, the brand and all that goes along. But it's something, and it's something that's aspirational of what we want to be, where we want to be, because you actually got to be held to account, and it's our team members who need to hold us to account. Are we being authentic? And I've used that word a couple of times. Are we being authentic? If we're authentic, it doesn't mean we get it right all the time, but are we authentic? And so then do we have the trust, and do we have the credibility with our team members and our stakeholders that we're not perfect, we're trying, and it's good not to be perfect because there's a lot to do. And if you want to put yourself up on top of the hill and say, we are the best at this, well, that's not the aim of it. The aim is it's like a North Star. The aim is this is where we want to get to, and we roll everything up into it. We roll the RAP, we roll our disability and inclusion strategy, all the stuff that Maricel's team works on. We roll up our CSR program, we roll up the foundation, and all that global compact, all that sits around it, the B Corp, and it gives it a depth. So it gives us, so it's not a mile wide. There's a lot of stuff in there, but all of it, and then we're moving into sustainability. All that is that we're evolving. We're moving to where our team members and the community expect business to be.
Okay. I mean, again, story from the old days. I mean, I remember when I first started in marketing and PR and sponsorships and stuff, I was told, trust me, the boss likes golf, so you're going to be doing golf days, but we'll do them for charity. Oh, okay, so charity golf days. So it became that kind of, if you could do a golf day and latch a charity on top of it, then you were doing your corporate social responsibility. But there was no rhyme, no reason outside of the fact that the boss liked golf. Or I remember one time having to brand a catamaran or something like that because that particular boss liked going out on the sea and stuff. But it was on behalf of, it might have been children in need or something like that. But the point is, there was no rhyme, no reason. There was no strategic intent. There was no stitched in. It was, if there was a new CEO the following year and he liked football matches, well, we'd be doing charity football. Right.
Yep.
So
and we've tried, particularly through our employee matching program, where employees can raise money for charities up to $750, $1,000 as a group, up to thousands of dollars, and we will match that to a charity that they're passionate about. So we don't dictate that. So that's the whole idea about the employee matching scheme, is that we've got employees matching. You mentioned Leslie, very strong supporter of the RSPCA. We've got employees with all sorts of. We've got an employee in Bechtel who's opened up a clinic, pro bono clinic for homeless. We've got people who do bike rides to raise money. We've got people in all sorts of areas. So we want people. We don't want to dictate to our team members, you've got to follow this strategy. We have some core ones when we'll talk about them, which is Indigenous health, and others where we think Aspen's experience and the expertise of Aspen can help shift the dial. But also we need to allow our team members to chase their dream of raising money for whatever issue they're passionate about.
Okay. Mel, I'm going to throw you one that I've just thought of.
Okay.
So you have no chance to prep. Again, and this might be just a conversation between the three of us, but I'll throw it to you. I've always kind of had this feeling, as we've opened up other offices for Aspen Medical, we're still quite, and I don't mean this, I don't mean we're Canberra-centric, but when we think of the foundation, Glenn is here, Mel is here, Craig is here, you're here, what's our intent as a company to broaden out what we want to do regionally on behalf of social purpose generally and social impact and all the work that we do, and even at a global level as well? Does that play into what you're thinking about and what you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. So with the Aspen Medical Foundation, we've actually brought on 2 employee observers, and we made them one from the Brisbane office and one from the Perth office to try and open it up just to Australia just to start with. So Dale Matthews and Greg Levin came onto the board this year in about June, and they're bringing their insights from the different offices into head office to see what's important to them. Also, part of my role was to start to try and promote and push, which we've been doing a lot of stuff on social media, try and push out the foundation, CSR, get people understanding what they actually can do. Like, a lot of people don't understand that Aspen will match up to $1,000 if you're in a team of any money that you raise for any charity. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, we will match that. People don't understand about workplace giving, that they can give straight from their pay into an account, into a charity of their choice. We don't dictate any of that, and that's part of my job, is to try and promote this and get it out so that everyone understands what they're entitled to.
So I think this is a great opportunity for an advert. So I think anybody from the Aspen Medical Group globally, if you're into a particular cause, then I think you should contact my colleague Mel Burrs and see how we go with that. But and as Craig shuffles uneasily in his seat, he says, don't start promising millions of bucks over to the United Arab Emirates. But look, I think that's an important thing, because, as I said, it's as a company, because we're surrounded by Glen every day, because we have people like you guys there, we feel it all the time. And I think that culture exists in the company. I'm beginning to see it, and I think an interesting one is, you know, when you go through what we're working on, there's a lot of stuff in the ACT in Canberra, and I get that. But all of a sudden you see this patch of the cancer research work we're doing in Queensland, in regional Queensland. And you just speak a little bit about that for anyone who's not 100% across what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so the Aspen Medical Foundation has partnered with the Australian Cancer Research Foundation. And what they're doing is pretty groundbreaking. So they've got a bus that is going to go through remote Queensland to do lung cancer screening, because quite often what happens in remote Australia, as we know, is people don't get to the cities to get tested until it's too late. So if they can start going around to the Indigenous communities and the remote communities around Roma and that sort of area, then they'll be able to screen people earlier and detect it and hopefully save a lot of lives.
Yeah, it's an incredible program. I think it's absolutely amazing. Partnership is a word that you just used, and I think I just want to throw this one out there as well. I'm going off completely, as you know, I'm going completely off script.
Can I just say that what you said about reaching out, that's one of our biggest challenges. Because if you look where our people are, just have a quick snapshot. Now, I'm going to have a crack where they are right here, and I'll miss something. We got doctors on vessels off South America, clinicians off vessels all around Australia. We've got people in Somalia, we've got people in the UAE, we've got people in the US, Saudi, we've got a team in Poland, come closer to home, Fiji, PNG, Indonesia, and then Australia. Yeah. I think that's it. I think Glen will correct it.
Do you know what? If there's a correction to be made, we'll throw it up on the screen.
So, then how do you reach all those people?
Yeah.
You know, because everyone's different. So that's what we've got to allow, and that's what we want. We need champions within those areas. It only works if you've got champions like Mel's talking about on the board, but others within regions reaching out to Mel and say, hey, we're doing this. Can you help? Because everyone's got their own different, own different focus, and then in some have got their own different priorities. But that's still the challenge. That's still the challenge to move us further out. And I'll give an example of, when Mel, you talk later about the foundations, our scholarships are moving to Fiji, to Papua New Guinea. They will move to Indonesia, and we're also supporting, a young, as you might be aware, a young 6-year-old Fijian girl lost her left arm in the bus accident. Yeah. So us, through Gavin and Barry in Fiji, are supporting her rehabilitation through quite some intensive rehabilitation. So we need to, we are a global company. Yeah. We're not a multinational, but we are global. We've got people everywhere. So how can we reach to them? One thing that astounded me is that. And I don't know if you're aware of this, is that when we had the bushfires here, our staff in the UAE raised $15,000 and sent it over to us.
I was getting phone calls and emails
they sent
from people
our
in the
staff
UAE.
In the UAE, who most of them are on very minimal wages, raised money and sent it to Australian bushfire appeal. That's humbling. That's absolutely humbling. So, but you're right. That's like the North Star. We're talking about, that's something we've got to keep working on, how we get out and communicate. So you're right. We are a bit Canberra centric because that's where the home is. But that's not an excuse to stay the way it is. We've got to move further out.
So, I mean, for argument's sake, some of the pillars that we have as a business, and you kind of touched on it, what people need to do regionally or within their own geographic part of the world might be slightly different to what we feel is important here in Australia. But there are probably immovables for us. People with disability, we want to support. Indigenous health. So, for argument's sake, I'm just throwing this out there, if we manage to go to Brazil for some reason, that we know there are challenges as well for Indigenous Brazilians and stuff like that. So we would, I'm not trying to make up policy here. I'm just trying to think is that how we want to play it? Now, outside of that, there could be patches where it needs to be localized, but there are certain immovables for us, scholarships and working within a health-related degree for disadvantaged groups.
Yeah, we are constrained with our foundation on what type of charity we are.
Yeah.
So we are a health promotion charity. So it's got to be around health. It can't be, it's got to be, but most things can link to health. Homelessness, all that sort of stuff can link to health. So that's, and so the foundation has got to have some, and Mel will talk about that probably in the next session with you around, some pillars around Indigenous health, disability, other sectors. But this also means in the CSR space, it can be across anything. It's what the team member wants. It can be anything. Long as it's there's some rigor around the charity. That's the only thing. So.
Where does B Corp? Another layer of complexity.
Yeah.
Let's throw another layer of complexity in on top of poor Craig here. So where does B Corp fit into all this for us?
So Benefit Corporation, I saw in the US about 10 or 12 years ago. And I came back to Glenn and we talked about, we're trying to look at something that wasn't a tick box, something that really held us to account. And my God, it holds us to account more than I ever imagined, because it took us 2.5 years to get accredited first time. And we're in our third recertification and we're at the 2-year mark. And I've got to take a lot of credit to Colin and the sustainability team, Anna Mercica, who just worked tirelessly gathering this data. But what it is, and we complain all the time about the B Corp auditing, but it's what we wanted. It's audits around community, employees, engagement, stakeholders, suppliers, where we procure stuff. And what that sets us in good stead with, now the rest of the world is waking up and going to ESG and sustainability.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
Go on.
But we're almost there, because we've already been doing it with B Corp. Now we've got a nuance of thing. But I would even say when we talk about sustainability, that's a self-assessment. Yeah. It's not regulated. So B Corp is an independent assessment. Now it's not very well known in Australia, but hopefully in time it will gather more traction. There's some if you look along the stores and you look at other organisations, there's more and more companies becoming part of the movement, and it's basically saying business needs to do better. Business can do better. Yeah. Business should do better.
So anyone who doesn't know, we'll put up the website address for B Corp in Australia to have a look. I was looking at it over the past few days as we were prepping for this, and what you find is when you're reading about the companies, and there's hundreds of companies in Australia, and you're right, some are small, some are boutique, and some are bigger than you think. But what's interesting is even when you read their mission statement on their websites, and there's a bank, I think it's Australia Bank of Australia. Yep. And not going to lend to certain sectors of the economy, and that's an absolute definitive for them. It's owned by the customers, not by shareholders, and you begin to get quite inspired by this is the kind of thinking that people have, and that's when you begin to make that connection with social purpose. It's people who are getting up out of their bed every morning to do something positive within society and making money. No one has to apologise for doing that. We got to pay the bills, right? And I know you said something earlier on there about we complain about the audits, but I think I've been part of that process, and I think what it does and has done for us as a company is say, we know we do that. Why do we have to prove it? Here's an article that Eamonn Quinn did, and a media thing that's it, and it's like, well, hold on a second. We know we've been doing these things. Now it's actually quite good for us to record, put it as part of our processes, so that we can hand over that, like an audit that's done by a big audit company, and say, we are saying we do this. This is our proof that we do what we say, right?
Yeah, and I'll give you a great example. Is maybe in the second audit, Maricel was doing a gender pay gap audit. Yeah. And it was not good.
No, I remember.
It was not good, and we were in ignorant bliss. What do you call, and so there it is. There, It came out in the audit, published. So, and we still, we've moved a long way from that. We've still got a way to go, and this is about what we should be aspiring to. But that B Corp audit showed that, no, we had a gender pay gap, and so we need to address it.
Okay. We have talked about ESG. Mel, don't you? You're not getting away with it yet. I'm coming back to you now. You're going to get the last 4 in a row. But ESG, it's just, again, I don't mean to make this complicated. Maybe we need a graph at Aspen Medical that explains what all this is. As he says, maybe there's a graph on the screen already that somebody has. But ESG is this is the new terminology that you're hearing all the time. And where does that fit?
Well, so ESG, sustainability, it really wraps up what we're doing in B Corp, but a lot more measuring around environment. So as a company, should we be like other companies and be aligned to net zero? Yes, aspirational, like 2050, I think it is. So, but we've got to start a pathway there. And we do it doing our bit. Where ESG and sustainability will only gain traction if it's regulated, because companies need to be. So modern slavery, we're a signatory to modern slavery, but we get audited on modern slavery because we're above a threshold. Now that's good. That keeps companies, on their toes. So at the moment, ESG is a little bit, it's unregulated at the moment, because if you look at companies' ESG reports, they can be a lot of, no offence, can be a lot of marketing.
Hey, listen.
Them. So we've got
fluff, we like to call it.
And you were on the call the other day with it. We've got to make sure our report is authentic when we get there, but also there's a lot of reporting going on, and we know that's a burden on a number of people in the company. So we've got to try and have systems. This is where Sanya's team comes in very handy. We've got to have some systems in data collection that they all feed into one another. So hopefully we have a sustainability report, feeds into our B Corp report, feeds into our RAP. They all feed up into it. So we haven't got parallel reporting, gathering data, but eventually sustainability and ESG reporting will be the norm. It'll get there. We're a little bit behind in Australia, but in the UK and other places, you're mandated reporting around certain areas at certain thresholds, and we'll get there. So it's us getting ahead of the game, but also, why should we do it? This is the question. Why we should? And Glenn and Bruce say this often. They say, and I've heard both of them say numerous times why we do it. Because it's the right thing to do. That's the end of story. It is the right thing to do.
Yeah. Okay.
And that sounds a bit Boy Scoutish, but it's true.
But I think that's what integrity is about, right? And that's one of our values as a business. And integrity is about doing the right stuff. And I know we've mentioned Colin MacDonald a few times, who's been a big part of, particularly from the B Corp perspective, and plays a big role in ESG. He coined a phrase that he pretends actually came from, but it was his own phrase because he overheard it. But he pretends it came from B Corp, but they never used it themselves. But I thought it was a nice way of summing it up at the time as we were trying to get used to it. And he said, it's about doing the right things in the right way. And and I think that's a nice way. If you wanted to, you could read all the literature, but if you think it's about doing the right things in the right way, and that's about integrity, I think. Yeah. Now, Mel Burrs, as we like to call you. We've mentioned the foundation, so we know the foundation was founded, as you said, a health promotion charity. So we won't get into the background too much. Founded sometime around
2009.
2009. That you've been doing your homework, Melissa Burrs. Mel, just on the foundation, we've mentioned it a few times, and probably now is a good time to sort of home in on the foundation as such. Where does foundation fit in to Aspen Medical's overall strategy that we're talking about here? What part does it play?
So like Craig said, the foundation is a health promotion charity. So it sits alongside CSR, is the way I would see it. The foundation focuses on remote First Nations communities. The three aspects that we generally focus on are scholarships, health promotion. So that can be, our partnerships with MAUPA, our partnership with RHD, the lung cancer screening bus, and then the other part is research. So we do some research through Newcastle University and also through the University of New South Wales. Yeah. So we focus mainly on First Nations health. CSR, the other side of the impact, is everything else, like Craig said. Aspen has a strong focus on disability, And that's where a lot of our CSR is focused on.
Now, we have a lot of people think that, you know, you pour money into something and you hope it gets solved somewhere else, and that's part of. But in fairness, I want to talk about One Disease momentarily. So One Disease is a body that we partnered with, and it's now I always get the elimination versus eradication. So I'm going to think, I think it was the eradication of crusted scabies within the Indigenous population, and there was success. Now we were one of several, but there was success.
In trachoma, crusted scabies, now we're on the journey with rheumatic heart disease. Trachoma has been massive reduction, and we're one of the players. So we're a part of a group, and generally a group that's got the philosophy is we don't go into First Nation communities. You don't want another organisation in there stumbling around. We support organisations, primarily Indigenous-led organisations, who are already in there working, who are already in there with the community or have trust of the community. So that's got to be key. So I think when we took on trachoma was...
At the 15, I'm going to say about 15, 20%.
It's something like that. It was like, from memory, it had to be above, I think it's like above 7 or 8% to be at epidemic proportions. And you know, you've heard all the stuff. Australia hadn't eradicated trachoma where places like sub-Saharan Africa had, all through most of the developing world had, but we hadn't achieved that. So over the time, and it's massive reductions through a whole lot of players. You know, we played our small role in that, but it got a voice through our partners, just as rheumatic heart diseases. You know,
and that charge was led, because I've met him on a couple of occasions, by Professor Hugh Taylor down at the University of Melbourne and the Indigenous Eye Health Unit.
Indigenous Eye Health Unit, and we partnered them for 8 and 10 years. But I don't want to overstate our impact on this, but we were one of many who partnered with that. And crusted scabies was about reducing the time in hospital around crusted scabies and the access and having access. And One Disease just did a great job to the north of Australia, probably from Darwin across to Weipa, where they focused.
But it's one of those great moments of the organisation existed to do something. One Disease was there, and the idea was tackling this one disease at a time. It actually put itself out of business in that sense.
That's right.
Because they achieved the objective, which meant the right people in the room, with the right support, with the right person leading it, who was Dr. Sam Prince. But the objective, the point I'm trying to make is, it's not always about throwing money in and it never goes away. This was a very focused campaign and achieved its objectives of eradication.
And rheumatic heart disease in the last budget, I think got 12 or 14 million, and so the Nachos are going to run the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander health system's going to look after that implementation, which is great. There's still a long way to go with rheumatic heart disease, and rheumatic heart disease is not too dissimilar in trachoma. In trachoma, you can have although rheumatic heart disease is a mortality, whereas trachoma is not, but trachoma you can have, or not as prevalent, blindness, but trachoma, you can have the operation and still get trachoma. Rheumatic heart disease, you can have the open heart, so you've seen all the pictures with the young boys and girls with the open heart surgery, and you can still get the strep after it. You can still get dramatic. It's not, that doesn't, if you're not dealing with the core issues. So, but those core issues come to the heart of the community and working with the community and trusting the community and what they want to put in place to deal with it.
I had the privilege of going down I just got a rush of blood to the head. And I said, I'm going down to South Australia. We were in Adelaide, and we were actually doing something else. We were actually doing a filming piece for the Vivian Bullwinkle statue, which we might get to. And I realised in Adelaide we were doing a MALPA. There was a MALPA thing going on. So I'd love to talk a little bit about MALPA, because I just found it was a wonderful experience, because there was Indigenous kids and non-Indigenous kids brought together to act as health ambassadors within their own communities or their own households and stuff like that. So rates of smoking and things like that were higher among some of the Indigenous children's parents. Most of the kids had both their parents smoked. So this was about smoking, a no smoking thing, and it was delivered in a very, very good way. Glenn was there, and one of our non-executive directors, Dr. Susan Newhouse, was there as well, just to see it firsthand. Just describe what MALPA. I've probably described it. But just talk a little bit more about MALPA and what it's doing, and is it nationwide? Is it?
So MALPA, they're an incredible organisation that Aspen Medical Foundation has partnered with for a while now. They go into schools, like you said, normally with kids that are about 11 because they think that's the most impressionable age. They're generally in lower socio-economical areas that they come from, the schools, and they do this 10-week program that goes through different things. So the smoking's one of them, but it'll go right back to the Aboriginal culture and bush medicine. They teach them a lot about that too. They'll take them to the hospitals, talk to doctors, and just give them a different perspective on different career choices too, because Don, the CEO of MALPA, had said to me, everybody wants to be an NRL football player and not everyone's going to make it, so we need to give them a plan B. And so even introducing them to health, and a lot of them would have thought that that really wasn't an option for them, and they can see those sort of things. And then they go back into their communities with the things that they've learned and teach their parents. So, and one of the groups wanted to go all the way up to Alice Springs to teach, the kids were going to teach the community there. So they became the teachers and went back through MALPA. It was pretty incredible.
It's fabulous. I mean, and look, that is a beautiful segue because you've talked about, kids wanting a different career path and Indigenous kids, that brings me to scholarship program, which to me, you and I have done quite a bit of work on this over the past few weeks, and then I asked a question last week because that's what I do. I ask questions and I think, is there a story here? And I said, how many scholarships have we done? Now, in the old days, before you came along, Mel, you would say that question. You would ask that question of Craig Fitzgerald, who would go off he would get a poster pad and say, we did 2 last year, I can't remember that. And then you'd say, but thankfully you're in the room now. So you were able to tell me that somewhere around 19, 20 scholarships, we've spent over $500,000, or we've funded up to over $500,000. The ones that I've been involved in recently has been the Bullwinkle one, which is a fantastic piece. We'll talk about that. But also, we were in South Australia. We did 2 at the Lauita Institute as well. So just describe, again, it's without, the obvious stuff is, it is a health-related degree. It's a scholarship, First Nations people, because we're seeing that this is how we can get people into that space because we know it's a challenge. It must be very worthwhile because you always have a smile on your face when you're ringing up saying, oh my God, we've just given away another 50 grand. So, just talk a little bit about what it's like to be part of that.
Yeah, I think scholarships is one of our best things that we're doing because it's capacity building. So it's getting people that may not have gone to university because they don't have the money into university in a health-related degree to go back into their communities, if that's their choice, to deliver healthcare to other First Nations people because we know that there's a big gap in that area. So the more First Nations people we can get into health, the better. So we have scholarships, 9 people have completed their scholarships, and that's postgrads and degrees. And now we've got enrolled nurses. Celine, who we interviewed earlier, she is a social worker now. She's finished. There's a doctor. So one of our scholarship holders has been with us for a long time now, and she started off doing a postgrad in mental health, a master's in mental health, and now she's starting to be a doctor. And at the end of this year, she'll finish. So it's just pretty incredible that we've been able to come full circle. There's 3 young ladies that are going to finish their Bachelor in Nursing this year, and 2 of them have reached out to say, would we support them for a postgrad, which we 100% would, because that's what we want to see, people getting the skills up and then heading back out to make a difference.
And wouldn't it be great to see maybe a kid who went through the MALPA program at some stage come to us and say, oh, by the way, I did this. We all have those bits from school you remember when you were 9, 10, 12, whatever it transpired to be, and then you come back and you go, that made just a huge impression on me. Now I want to study medicine, and there's a pathway potentially for people to do that. I just thought I must say I agree with Mel completely. When you see the scholarship piece, I think for us, outside of obviously the health promotion pieces that we do, which have those real effects, when you see that you're building people's lives, and that's a great way to put it, building capacity. When you're beginning to make that, I think that's a great story for us that we probably don't tell as well as we should, as he goes and shoots himself in the foot. But that you and I are working on that at the moment. We are certainly getting there. One of the scholarships, Craig, just to kind of close it out, to stay on the scholarship, was the Vivian Bullwinkle one, and that sort of encapsulates so much. Again, it's a scholarship. But not only that, it's going to an indigenous person. It's in the name of Vivian Bullwinkle. Do you want to just take us through what that is about, where it came from?
So Vivian Bullwinkle, as maybe some don't know, World War II nurse, was involved in a massacre on Renati Beach in Asia, where 21 of her colleagues were massacred. She was the sole survivor. She was then interned for a couple of years and came back to Australia, and her aim was, and I hope I do this just explanation, to all the nurses out there, justice. Her aim was to never forget those sacrifices that were made by her colleagues. And so we've supported the Vivian Bullwinkle sculpture, not the foundation, the CSR, in the War Memorial, because we think, as a company that employs a lot of nurses, a lot of clinicians, she is a doyen of that community, or was a doyen of that community. So first female sculptor at the War Memorial, very, very poignant. But also just as important is that we've committed to a long-term commitment to have an Indigenous Vivian Bullwinkle scholarship through the Australian College of Nursing, and I think that's an amazing way to keep her memory going, and in time there'll be, graduates, Indigenous men or women, graduating through nursing under the Vivian Bullwinkle Scholarship.
And to finish where we started, rather, it's a really this has just dawned on me, as often it does. We started speaking about that difference between CSR and purpose and all that. And in fact, the reason it's probably sticking with me so much is the Vivian Bullwinkle sponsorship, call it what you want, actually has those two parts together. On one side, we have Aspen Medical Proprietary Limited doing something that's right, which is reflecting on a well-known hero, so to speak, a nurse and the first woman to ever have a statue at the Australian War Memorial. And that's right for us because, as you said, we're nursing. But at the same time, we've also added in on top of that the scholarship piece for First Nations people under her name. So it's a nice wrap-up of, I guess, CSR and social purpose, seeing it actually come together in that way for our company, which is fantastic.
Yeah, no, we are a veteran-owned company, and we support a lot of organisations outside of veterans organisations, but we also naturally are close to, we're a major supporter of legacy. The promise made in World War I that your sacrifice will be, we will look after your partners, mothers, wives, husbands who don't make it home. So we're a big supporter of legacy. 100 years anniversary of legacy. Once again a bedrock charity in the Australian context. But we support a wide variety of issues. We've got mental health mob, which we support. We support everything from homeless charities through to MS charity. MS done a big MS promotion. So it's a wide. It's got to be, as I was saying before, it's got to be wide. It's got and a lot of these are bought by our team members. So hopefully we get more people come forward.
Well, look, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you both, and I think if anyone's out there listening to us, and I'm sure they are, or I'll be fired if they're not. But I think if people are listening to us, I think if you didn't understand previously what we were about as a company, hopefully you've got something out of this. It might have sparked some interest in what we're doing at the foundation and how you might be able to contribute. You might want to talk about how you can take advantage of matching funds and so on, and even volunteering days, which is important as well because the company gives 2 volunteering days as well as part of that. So get in touch with Mel, flood her inbox.
Yes.
Give her something to do on those days when she's not in work, when she goes, I wish you didn't do that, but that's what you do. So look, on behalf of me, on behalf of everyone else, thank you both for your time. It's been absolutely wonderful. I really appreciate it, and I hope you've liked it too. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Eamon.
Thank you.